All right, so it's Memorial Day. Um, when this day rolls around, I maybe think about things a little bit differently than most. Maybe I don't. Maybe I'm less original than maybe I thought maybe I am when it comes to Memorial Day and all the other days out there where we honor maybe our veterans or the dead. You know, when I think about this day, I know generally most people think barbecue, maybe getting together with family. Maybe there's a Memorial Day sale going on. A lot of folks I know go to the lake. Maybe they just sit back and rest. You know, we have a whole lot that many of us do, and it's a wide variety of things that we do. So, to my understanding, I guess this day started about 1868, a few years after the Civil War. Some say, I would have figured it would have been closer to the Civil War, considered it ended at April 9th, 1865 at Appomattox. That's when Lee surrendered. I guess maybe the whole gravity and the solemnity of that entire occasion being the Civil War from 1861 to 65, they probably needed a couple of years to even figure out what happened when you stop to consider that during that war, 620,000 lost their lives. 620,000 Americans. Now, depending on whom you ask, that's more than every American that has died in war from that time until this day. I got to believe that we're at least, that was true when I was a kid. I don't know that that's true anymore. And it just gives me pause. Now, consider 620,000 died in the Civil War. And then we got people like people that I look up to, like Robert E. Lee, that said, "It is well that war is terrible, lest we should grow too fond of it." Now, it wasn't directly attributed to him, but many believe that he's actually said it that. There's variations, but you get the point. It is well that war is terrible, lest we should grow too fond of it. Wasn't long later that we find ourselves into the Spanish-American War, which we now know was a complete... It was a false flag. It began on a false flag like all the others. And what is it? 2,000 Americans died in that. Not long after that, then we lose, 110,000, depending on the numbers you consider. And then we're not even considering all the ones that died post-war. We always think about the ones that died in the carnage and the combat of war. We get into World War II, and then what did we lose? About 420,000 there. And then we kick into Korea, 36,000. Vietnam, 58,000 and some change. Gulf War and Two, first Gulf War, 150, and then Gulf Two and Afghanistan, if you add them all up, maybe you got about 5,000. I said all that to say this, and folks, forgive me if it seems a little disjointed because I'm not exactly, reading from a teleprompter here. Now, I will use the aid of what I'm about to use right now, which is written on this iPad. Now, for anybody that's going to say, well, you sound like a red diaper doper baby, consider that the words that I'm about to read were written by a two-time Medal of Honor winner. One of only, in my estimation, I think 9 people that have ever won it twice, and he would have won it a third time had he accepted. That is General Smedley Darlington Butler. He wrote a book, and I think it was written back in 1935, I think, and it's on the shelf out there. Now, these are the words coming from this guy. And this is just a small portion of it. And the name of the book is called War is a Racket. And it's divided into 5 chapters. War is a Racket being number 1. Who makes the profits? Who pays the bills? How to smash the racket? And to hell with war. That's his final chapter. Not a long book, and I'm sure it's on the shelf out there unless somebody didn't return it. And here's a brief summary of what General Butler had to say. War is a racket. It always has been. It is possibly the oldest, easily the most profitable, surely the most vicious. It is the only one international in scope. It is the only one in which the profits are reckoned in dollars and the losses in lives. A racket is best described, I believe, as something that is not what it seems to the majority of people. Only a very small inside group knows what it's about, and it's conducted for the benefit of the very few, at the expense of the very many. Out of war, a few people make huge fortunes. he wrote a lot more in there, and believe me, he goes chapter and verse. And this was in 1935, obviously before World War One. He'd seen it up close and personal, and it even goes into the grimy, nasty, filthy details as to why this happened. He goes on to say, I helped Mexico, especially Tampico, save for American oil interests in 1914. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the National City Bank boys to collect their revenues in. I helped in the raping of a half a dozen Central American republics for the benefit of Wall Street. The record of racketeering is long. I helped purify Nicaragua for the international banking house of Brown Brothers from 1909 to 1912. Believe me, I could wax philosophically about Brown Brothers Harriman forever and a day, and the people that we now consider American heroes, like the Dulles brothers, involved in all that, but I digress. He goes on to say, I brought light to the Dominican Republic for the American sugar interests in 1916. In China, I helped to see that Standard Oil went its way unmolested. Two-time Medal of Honor winner, like I said, would have taken it a third time had he accepted. So going right back to Memorial Day and the words of Robert E. Lee, it is well that war is terrible, lest we should grow too fond of it. Do you think we learned anything? Do you think that these American heroes like Robert E. Lee and people like General Butler, are we listening to them? Because if the powers that shouldn't be have their way, the Memorial Day next year will dwarf all the others combined. I guess we've become really accustomed to these antiseptic wars where we do a lot of this stuff with a joystick mouse from a drone. But that's not the insight of the people that I'm citing here. Now, before I leave here, I want to talk about General Butler. Like I said, he even had a chapter in here, How to Smash the Racket. And I think he sums it up beautifully. And there's really only three major things. And the first is make war unprofitable. In fact, he writes, it can be smashed effectively only by taking the profit out of war. The only way to smash this racket is to conscript capital and industry and labor before the nation's manhood can be conscripted. Let the officers and the directors of the high-powered executives of our armament factories and our steel companies and our munition makers and our shipbuilders and our airplane builders and the speculators be conscripted at a rate of $30 a month, which is what they were paying Joes back then. And that's number one. Acts of war should be decided by those who fight it. Meaning that all of those people, the powers that shouldn't be, that, profit from big business and big war, all of those people don't even get a vote in it. Maybe that includes Congress. I think General Butler might have been on to something. And then he also goes on to say, now this is, goes right back to George Washington. How about that? Limitation of militaries to self-defense. For the United States, Butler recommended that the Navy be limited by law to operate within 200 miles of the U.S. coastline, and then the Army be restricted to territorial limits of the country and be fought only when, basically living by the non-aggression principle, meaning don't start no SH and there won't be no IT. That's essentially what Butler's saying there. Three simple ways to avoid this, to where we never have to necessarily celebrate another Memorial Day if we were to take the advice of great men like him. Now, I know it's in poor form for anybody to say Happy Memorial Day, and I'm not going to criticize anybody for the way you choose to go about this day, but I'm just going to ask you to consider the things I just pointed out here. And ask yourselves, number one, is war a racket? And did we listen to anything? And he's just one of many that I could cite. Have we listened to anything of all these warriors who fought in some dreadful places? Have we listened to their warnings about what happens when you become a decadent population? I dare say we didn't. Anyway, I hope this day is a blessing to you and yours. And until next time, this is Billy from Perma Pastures Farm. We'll see you.